Welcome to I Feel You, the podcast with your host, Dwayne Washington. I was born and raised with my family, my mom, my daddy Ronnie, my other daddy Dwayne, and my brother Quincy. I grew up in the 90s and 2000s surrounded by nothing but friends and family in the tight-knit community of Cartersville, Georgia. After graduation, I attended Savannah State University where I loved to party and experiment with a lot of drugs. I was even homeless for a point in time in my life. But that was then, and this is now. I'm growing and evolving into a better person each and every day. And with that, I would like to say welcome to Season 2 of I Feel You, the podcast. What's going on? This is Dwayne here with I Feel You, the podcast. And today's special guest is Rahsheim Wright. Rahsheim is a 2004 graduate of Savannah State University. Yes, we were speaking before we started recording or whatever, and just acknowledging that Rahsheim and I, we've worked in several areas together. We both worked at a local radio station in Savannah, E93 Jams. We worked there. We were also involved together in a political organization in the state of Georgia called the Young Democrats of Georgia, where we worked with a lot of young people that were involved in politics. One of them being a Georgia State Senator, Nikema Williams, whatever. So we all worked around her. And now Rahsheim he works at SEIU. And where he is using his influence and things that he's learned in politics to further SEIU and help them in their charge in creating unions for healthcare workers, janitors, and things of the like. And so I present to some, or however it goes. I just messed it all up, but we're going to keep it going. But I present to everyone, we got Rahsheim Wright, graduate of Savannah State University, and also he works at SEIU. Take it, Rahsheim. How's everything going for you today?
Man, everything is going well, man. It's a beautiful day where I am. Sun is shining. So, I'm feeling good this morning.
I'm glad to hear that. All right, so we're just going to jump right on into it, man. So, Rahsheim, like I stated earlier, we've known each other for some years, man. We go back a long time. So, can you tell me a little bit about yourself and your growing up in the DC area, Washington DC area?
Yeah. So I'm a native of Washington DC, born in DC, Columbia Hospital for Women. To a single mom, worked very hard. Dad was involved. He in and out. Vietnam vet. So, of course, there were always some issues with our veterans, not getting the proper treatment, not being diagnosed properly for PSTDs, things like that. So, I grew up in a household mainly headed by my mother, in D.C., later moved to Maryland, towards closer to my teenage years. And as an adolescent, and, just went to high school, went to public school, or was involved in extracurricular activities. For me, I always saw like a vision of what's a vision of more, a vision of more. I enjoyed catching the metro, going downtown, seeing the Capitol. So it was like, man, we're around all this power, power and influence, So when I was in high school, I was active in ROTC. I was gung-ho. I thought I was going to be like this military leader, all when all the cadet leadership trainings,
Gotcha.
I grew up, and in DC metro area. When I moved to Maryland, I moved inside the Beltway, which is more of an at-risk community inside the Beltway, in Prince George's County, which is like all black county.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about it.
But yeah. And so, being involved there, we were bussed out. I was in a magnet program, bussed out to a more suburban school, and they had developed an RTC program, And so I got involved there through being involved in leadership. And then also I was a singer, so I grew up singing in the different choirs and in school and all. And so I became highly involved in high school. And so one day while I was in ROTC, some commanders and admirals came into my classroom and they were black. And so I
Wow.
was like, okay, I was like, I've never really met a black high ranking officer.
Right.
And these high ranking black officers were graduates at Savannah State University. And
Wow.
they took a group of cadet leaders in the room, talked to us about Savannah State, the NRTC program. Never heard of Savannah, never really heard of Savannah State. I'm a kid from, DC, suburban Maryland, you know. And so, I took an opportunity. Those guys said, hey, you come to Savannah State, we'll take care of you.
Right.
That was true. When I got
Right.
took care of you, folks were standing in some long lines. I didn't have to worry about some of those things, mainly
Right.
because those officers said they made a commitment to take care of me.
Right.
And so while in college, that's when I started really getting McGroin in my activism. We had these radical black professors
Right. Right.
written books and had you after class, you about ready to fight the power.
Right.
And some of those ideals were ingrained in us, when you learn about the history of Savannah community. And so I started getting involved, started creating organizations. We were involved in Black Students with a Mission
Right.
on campus. And so I really understood the power of students and the power of organizing.
Okay.
Yeah. That we had the power, we collectively, we stood together, we can make a change.
Right.
Like a union, right?
Right.
We're all students, we all pay into this university. So it's more like whatever we say goes. That's how it should be.
Right.
But, we have administrators, faculty that, control the process. They're teaching us. But of course, with us learning, we learn the power of what we can do together and collectively. And
Right.
so we experienced that a couple of times while building coalitions to host like a mayoral debate. We did that on campus once, and big turnout. Media had on all media outlets. That's when Otis Johnson was running for mayor,
Right.
and also we did one when John Barrow, and that at that time that congressional district was held by a Republican.
Right.
And so we used our student and campus influence. Everybody's always trying to get the black vote. And what place in Savannah to get the black vote than the Black University, right?
Right.
And so that's where you're going to have a mass of black people. It's always been a convener of black people in Savannah for over 100 years, right?
Right.
So we use that as an opportunity, and we, again, a coalition of student leaders, we got together again. That's when I really learned the real art of true organizing right on campus. So
Right.
it was like a laboratory to learn and experience and to fail, right?
Right.
And so we did that, and I realized, okay, like politics is a thing. Like collectively, we can really make an influence, And so I did that. Got actively involved as president of the Young Democrats of Chatham County, and then was on the executive board of the Georgia Young Democrats, where me and Nakima became very close friends, organizing around the state of Georgia. At that time, Georgia's red as red can be. Ain't no Democratic senators and nothing like that. It just transitioned from blue to completely solid red, right?
Yes.
And so that was, a lot of work that it took for us to be on the ground, really working. Stacey Abrams just got on the scene at that time. She was just a grassroots organizer, running for office at that time.
Yep.
So it was a lot of opportunity, but it was a lot of hard work. So I wound up after college, I worked at E93 with you, and then wound up getting from all that experience, I would say, on campus. When I got involved in the Young Democrats, I was involved in the Chatham County Democratic Party. And so that, I was one of the vice chairs, one of the young vice chairs, but we did a lot of organizing, working, help get different candidates that we supported, out of, the primary and then out of the general election. So that's when I really cut my teeth. My first real experience was, there was a candidate running for the first congressional district at that time,
Hmm.
really solid Republican district. And, I got picked up as a canvasser. I was still a student. And, you know, I I went to they had this room, and it was number of white boys in there. And I was like, where is it? Nobody here is black. Am I really the only black guy? So I was
Right.
able to say, here's your list, go out, knock on doors, talk to the candidate, record the information. So I
Right.
did that for a little bit. But, I wanted to do something more meaningful. And
Hmm.
so I wound up participating in a project um, that the graduate program in social work had at Savannah State.
Okay.
And that was really kind of like the change there. The graduate program, we were able to, our project was, I was one of the canvas leaders. And my job was to recruit a group of students, which I recruited from different campus organizations, primarily Black students with a mission, but other groups. And we were paired up with a neighborhood association leader
Okay.
and some of the roughest areas, some of the poorest areas of the city. And in that project that the Department of Social Work had, we were tasked with surveying, knocking on doors and actually surveying, going in people's houses and surveying the needs. Do they know about city services? And
Right.
so it was a project to, get information about how well do Chatham County, City of Savannah residents know about the services that are offered. And so we were in some of the poorest areas, knocking on doors. You know, People thought we were telemarketers, dogs barking at us.
Right.
We were with, that was my first experience of real hood neighborhood canvassing.
Right.
And, you know, we were with a neighborhood association leader. We were with a community. So we were students studying. Many of us weren't from Savannah who were in this project,
Hmm.
but we got to learn some of the poorest parts of the city. But we also realized that a lot of people didn't know about city services. And, we were seeing a lot of seniors there, a lot of these lower income seniors, fixed income, you know, been on public assistance for different things. They were all dependent on, most of the folks we surveyed were dependent on the government some way.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And to live. And so they saw no upward mobility and didn't really have anyone educating them about city services. So
Right.
as we were doing the survey, they didn't know about what was really offered,
Hmm.
but we were able to track, you know, we were able to track like, what was going on and
Right.
give the report back to the city. It was like, hey, people don't know about y'all services. Y'all got to do some advertising or send
Right.
some people in these communities knock on doors and say, this is what's offered. And so that was really my first experience. So I was like, man, I want to kind of be a change agent. And
Hmm.
so through that, I worked a couple of corporate jobs and wound up getting a call, saying, hey, we hear that you did a lot of work in Savannah, da 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 da. Want to join the Obama campaign? So I'm like, okay. So I went to a training in South Carolina, and from that training, I got picked up as like one of the regional field directors,
Right.
at coastal Georgia. So
Hmm.
mobilized a lot of people, sent a lot of people to South Carolina for the primary. Then
Hmm.
from there, I went to Texas, came back to Georgia,
Hmm.
and um,
Now, how was that experience? I don't mean to cut you off, but how was that experience?
oh man, it was one of the most life changing experiences. I got to meet so many people,
Right.
so many people. It's so funny. A lot of the elected officials you see now, you know, I've
Right.
worked with or been
Right.
involved with through a lot of this network of organizing. But
Right.
I've never seen as much enthusiasm as I saw, from Georgia to South Carolina
Hmm.
to Texas to Alabama. Throughout the South, there was like so much energy for Barack Obama. I mean, he was the first, and
Right.
then the way he spoke so well, but he spoke in a way that inspired. I
Right.
guess not spoke well, but spoke so inspiring, was able to motivate such of the masses to turn out. You
Right.
know? And then Michelle, I mean, she was just so awesome. So it was great. It was a blessing to have an opportunity to meet both of them as
Right.
well, but also campaign for them. but the energy on the ground was just amazing. It was unity, and it was like we all could do it. We are achieving. We're all on the same ground. We're all, part of this. There were a lot of people who never voted before that were first time voters in that election. So it was like great. It was awesome,
Got
and that's when I really experienced the power of labor and SEIU.
hmm
Previous to that, as a kid, I used to hear my uncles. Two of my uncles were like really actively involved in labor unions,
Right.
and Thanksgiving would be a time to gather, and I used to hear stories, about labor fight, workers' rights. We need our pay. They're handling grievances. Talking through politics and the struggle, and how labor and the movement is still alive. you know and so that's when I really heard it, but I really saw it in action when I was working on the campaign. I had an opportunity to work with some SEIU folks,
Right.
and they came through like maybe 300 deep, and like a purple army. Never thought,
Right.
didn't think I was going to wind up working for them, at the time, but
Right.
still kept some of those relationships. And from there, after the election, I didn't go right into the administration. I worked for a member of Congress for about 4 years that we are still great friends with, Donna Edwards. She was
Okay.
big progressive labor champion. So that's really how I really, really got deeper in it,
Right.
with her. And she had so many national and local allies that were in labor. I was able to build relationship and understanding what each membership of these unions do, who they represent, and
Mhm.
how they build power, and how the legislative branch actually helps them build power. So it was a great experience working with her. We were able to do some amazing community work, political work, nationally and locally. We're still good friends. She's still on MSNBC, you know,
Right.
but it was really a good experience. I mean, as a boss, we were able to, as the principal who we work for, we were able to collaborate and brainstorm and create so many community-based things, create different policies, or um, many different bills, introduce different bills in the House. At that time, Republicans held a lot. They
Right.
were in control of a lot, so many weren't passed, but there were a lot introduced. But there was a lot of community work done locally as well here in the DMV. So it was
Now,
a great experience.
were you helpful in the crafting of some of those bills, even though they might not have been passed? Were they some of your ideas or whatever that you thought would help the community in your area?
Well, a lot of them were collective ideas.
Right.
A lot of it was collective brainstorming
Mhm.
ideas. And we were able to do that a lot working for
Mhm.
her as a team and as a staff. But
Right.
we did it with input from the community.
Right.
It's important to hear, and we were able to do town halls. During the Obamacare,
Mhm.
that whole craze. We had, I organized town halls throughout the congressional district, and it was a real crazy time, though, man. It was exciting
Right.
because everything was so fast paced, but
Right.
it was really a crazy time because it was like, okay, healthcare is really important. Will we get this done? Why are people so angry that more people will have access to healthcare? I couldn't explain that. You
Right.
know, Many of us, no matter our degree levels, have had an instance where we were really unemployed. So
True.
we're drawing some type of unemployment or something,
Yes.
there was a need for healthcare, or there was some type of healthcare lapse. So
Right.
most Americans have had some type of experience, no matter which your educational level, all that.
Right.
So I have always thought it was important. I couldn't understand why so many people were like just so staunchly against it. You know,
Right.
many of it I think was because the black president proposed it.
Right.
But but
And they're probably the ones that needed it the most, just to be
exactly.
right. To
And
be
they
true.
were. And a
Right.
lot of chances they were the
Right.
ones that needed it the most.
Right. Okay. So we're gonna go into your work at SEIU
Mhm.
and your role at SEIU now. Like, what are you in charge of? And if also if you could break down SEIU and what they stand for as far as the labor or the union aspect of SEIU.
Well, before, I talked about when I was on the Obama campaign
Right.
and SEIU came like
Mm-hmm.
300 deep.
Right.
There's a lot of members from Local 1199, has a lot of history of, organizing healthcare workers. But
Mm-hmm.
during that time when I worked for Donna Edwards, I left and got a presidential appointment in the Obama administration. So I
Okay.
worked at the Department of Labor. So that was where I got a chance to see, the process of, you know, the power of labor and
Mm-hmm.
how they affect the process.
Right.
Whether it be, I saw an instance of how they affect the process on Capitol Hill. Then I
Mm-hmm.
was able to see firsthand how they affect the process in the executive branch of government, dealing with the
Wow.
secretary and dealing with the president, which is great to see. And I often saw how SEIU was, often at the forefront, of that advocacy. And
Right.
so while at the Obama administration, I got an opportunity to work on the local level um, at the Maryland and DC State Council. So basically, that was basically a coalition of local labor unions in the Maryland and DC area that, organize for worker rights, fight for justice at the local level. So I dealt a lot with city of DC, the state of Maryland, the legislatures, and really um, electing pro labor and progressive Democrats, but also, fighting to organize those workers on the ground there as well.
Okay.
When it came to like home care workers. So at that time, working on the local level, I was assigned to a home care campaign. And so one of the things there is that every advance that we have as labor comes through politics. Okay. A lot of the major advances come through politics for workers' rights and things like that to really influence some of the policies that can make it easier for us to organize. Um, and so I got assigned to this home care campaign. And basically, what it was a lot of Black and immigrant women who
Mm-hmm.
were any Black immigrant women, like West African,
Okay.
Jamaican, island women, and
Right.
our sisters, who really believed in taking care of folks, may not have you know, the education,
Right.
but really enjoyed working on the ground and serving people who can't
Right.
serve themselves. And a lot of times, in these households, you have maybe an older parent,
Mm-hmm.
who needs care around the clock care, to where there's somebody who has to work every day, so the care can't be managed. Or you see folks who have to lose their job or quit their job, in order to
Take care of someone.
their loved one.
Right. Right.
Also, they need to make some type of income while doing it because it is a job.
Right.
And so what we were trying to do at that time was, organize workers who worked at these um, slumlord business owners who formed these home care companies, and we held them accountable. So
Mm-hmm.
we work with a team to organize many of these home care agencies around DC and Maryland, primarily at that time DC, in the city, who were offering, horrible pay,
Mm-hmm.
no benefits, things like that. So we thought it was important, and a lot of these workers in DC were making $10 an hour
In DC,
in DC.
how you living off $10 an hour in DC?
Exactly. $11 an hour. So
Right.
for me, it was more personal at that time than just my job. You
Right.
know, Yeah, I got paid well doing it, but it was more personal to where I'm sitting in the home care workers' home, strategizing or training or coaching them on,
Mm-hmm.
okay, tomorrow we got to speak to the council member.
Mm-hmm.
You ready? So it's like you have to really coach a lot of it's like coaching those and inspiring those who normally wouldn't do this or normally wouldn't know the process of really getting to where if they want to make $15 an hour,
Right.
there's a way you can do it, but you got to press folks.
Right.
And a lot of people don't know the process of really, achieving
Impressive. Right.
goals, and I learned that through organizing students at Savannah State University. So,
Right.
so, it was really inspiring to see how, a lot of women who were not really confident enough to speak to, say, a council member or the mayor, or Congress member, you know, get in front of these folks and really develop the confidence to say, hey, we need $15 an hour. You
Right.
are giving it to us. We need this. How do you think we're going to live? You know,
Right.
so that was a really inspiring experience. Throughout that, I did some political work with some campaigns, and then I wound up back here at the working at the international. So I'm not at the local level where I was.
Okay.
So now I'm actually working on national campaigns and
All
really,
right.
um, coaching folks on the ground to really and supporting them on passing, different bills and legislative policies in different states.
Gotcha. So, you mentioned something earlier about fulfilling. How was working at SEIU? How was it fulfilling, or do you fulfilling do you believe that it's leading to a purpose, to a like you're fulfilling your purpose in life?
I say to a point, yes.
Okay.
I would say this. I got that feeling
Mm-hmm.
when I was, working when I was in Savannah at Savannah State,
Mm-hmm.
and we were working in with the social work department, and we were doing that canvas about
Right.
helping some of Savannah's poorest residents realize their services.
Services. Right.
After that experience, and believe me, like when we gathered back, the group of students, we were crying. We were
Right.
at it. We were like, "Oh my God, these people are living like so bad. It makes you want to do something about it."
Right.
And so, at that time, we were so junior, we didn't really understand the process, but we knew we were affecting the process just at least by gathering the surveys.
Right.
So it's kind of like that experience
Okay.
when you see janitors,
Mm-hmm.
when you see CNAs and healthcare workers, nurses,
Mm-hmm.
government secretaries, you know, um, some low wage workers
Mm-hmm.
actually band together and actually win and organize against big corporations. Hell
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's very fulfilling because it teaches you the power that when we band together, we can really collectively get what we want.
Right.
Just like when we're students, if we band together, oh, we can get that new building.
Right.
We can get this program.
Right.
So it's like that. I look at labor like outside of the black church. The
Mm-hmm.
black church is one of the only places where um, I would say black and our Latino brothers and sisters and immigrants gather. You know,
Right.
we come from a people with strong faith.
Right.
Outside of that, it's really the labor union is one place that we collectively put our money
Right.
to a pot to really
Mm-hmm.
affect change.
Gotcha.
And so that exactly is what a lot of labor unions' commitment is to band together to effectively make change, especially for the workers who are working every day.
Okay.
Because if you didn't, companies can do whatever they want.
That's
A lot
true.
of time, and in a lot of places, they do.
Right. Okay. And if you could just break down what SEIU stands for the people out there that might not know, and then
Okay.
maybe give a little bit of their backstories, like who founded it and things of that nature.
Well, SEIU is the Service Employees International Union.
Hmm.
They've been around for over 100 years.
Right.
Formed in Chicago back in the early back in the teens,
Hmm.
and there really have been a place where you know low wage workers actually can band together. But I'll digress from that and more so talk about you know what kind of got me inspired. Really is learning the stories of, like, I would say, some of the black trade unionists.
Right.
You know, taken away from the SEIU, there were times that black folks couldn't be in unions. You know, we
Right.
couldn't be in unions with the white folks.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? And so folks like Asa Philip Randolph,
Hmm.
they don't understand, who was a mentor to Dr. King. And really, if it wasn't for him, we really wouldn't have a Dr. King.
Right.
But he was president and organized the railroad workers, the black railroad workers.
Right.
You know, um, and he became into power because of that. Collectively, the black railroad workers were able to get, through striking and
Hmm.
walking off the job, and then these railroads knowing how beneficial, or they could not function without these black men or these
Right.
black workers. That's when they realized collective power, and that's when Asa Philip Randolph really, really pushed to make sure these black workers are getting paid properly,
Hmm.
and that spilled over. I mean, because we weren't getting paid properly, that's civil rights.
Right.
That's civil rights. And so when you have a Baptist preacher like Martin Luther King, and then you have organizers like Asa Philip Randolph and Bayard Rustin at that time,
Hmm.
who were
Right.
labor and activist organizers, a part of the movement, then you birth Martin Luther King. But
Hmm.
but when you look at the movement, labor have always been the backbone of the movement.
Right.
As
True.
funders, as organizers, as conveners, we've always been there. And especially our black brothers and sisters, they have always been there. Our forefathers,
Right.
you know,
Gotcha.
they've always been there fighting for it. So there was always a need at that time. There was always a need for, yes, you have the big labor movement, but there's always a need for black interest,
Right. That's
because at the end of the day, we're at the total pole of getting paid, you know, so we got to constantly fight in these structures. Uh,
right.
and so, from the history of like how labor has been involved, I mean, when Martin Luther King was in Memphis, that was a labor movement,
Hmm.
led by AFSCME, that's an association of county and municipal workers. Um, and Dr. King partnered with them to actually do the strike in Memphis for the sanitation workers, which
Gotcha.
fortunately, was when he got really radical and ended his life. But you know, um, labor, civil rights have always been connected,
Together. Right.
especially when it comes to black folks. And
That's
now
true.
we're dealing with challenges with our immigrant brothers and sisters who are having issues. So, immigrant rights, civil rights. And so we're continuously pushing,
Gotcha.
and those are some of the things, and core, I would say, at the core of labor and at the core of SEIU. Is a lot of, you know, fighting for justice, fighting for equal rights, fighting for racial justice as well.
Okay. All
Mhm.
right. So also you have your own business or whatever, the right solutions.
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
that
Mhm.
correct? And if you could explain a little bit more about your own firm or whatever and what you do with the right solutions.
Well, a lot of what we do is mainly like outreach,
Mm-hmm.
public relations work, um, building campaigns around mostly issues related to Black business, building economic wealth, making sure we have access. Um, for example, there's a big economic boom that's coming. And,
Mm-hmm.
if you look at the trends, I always tell folks at the end of the year when the president makes his State of the Union speech, we got to listen to it.
Mm-hmm.
Because at that time, he's really telling the national agenda this year a lot of what they're going to be investing in.
Mm-hmm.
People who are in the stock market and all that, if you're investors, you're listening to stuff like that because it shows
Right.
where the government is putting some of their priorities. And so over the past couple of years, they've been putting their priorities into clean energy.
Mm-hmm.
And clean energy, of course, is growing because, as you know, being in Atlanta and me being in the DC area, there's a lot of people who have electric vehicles now.
Right.
There's a lot of charging stations now.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of solar now. So there's a need to, and mainly because of what we've done over the past several hundred years to the environment.
Right.
There's a kind of a need to why we have to change. So I've been actively involved in clean energy, access and promotion through my business at the Right Solutions.
Okay.
Also, I've partnered with I partnered with another of my fellow Obama activists and a music producer called Mr. Hankey.
Mm-hmm.
He produced some of the hits like the City Girls Usher song,
Right.
some of Soldier Boy stuff, some major hits. We've all partnered together to form like a group called Clean Energy Culture. And so
Okay.
what we've really been doing is figuring out ways of how we can get, Black folks involved in climate
Right.
and getting them involved in clean energy,
Mm-hmm.
and but using music and making it a lifestyle. So,
Right.
using music, entertainment, and cultural influences to actually make clean energy a lifestyle.
Right.
So,
So it's making it hip, making I guess where the
yeah, taking it
millennials,
in.
yeah, so
It's
they can.
cool to let it be cool to drive an
Right.
electric cars.
Gotcha.
You know what I'm
Gotcha.
saying? Hyundai's doing them, Toyota's doing them,
Right.
Nissan's doing them. It's a thing now, but you don't understand what we drive and what it's doing to the air we breathe,
Right.
and overall going into what we eat.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like I remember I had a professor at Savannah State who used to always say a 300 interdisciplinary circle.
Right.
So it's like a 360,
Right.
of what it does, and moving to clean energy, helps us. But the thing is, how do we let Black folks know that this is a thing? One, on the jobs that are being created.
Mm-hmm.
Two, on the training, whether it be education, workforce development, because we have solar panels that need to be developed, charging stations, all that. How are we educating Black folks, and how are we changing, how we educate Black folks in the next generation to take advantage of this? Because it's very important. Um, not only the jobs and careers, not only just the education, but also how do we use it to actually lower our utility bills for how we live?
Right.
Every day. Are we thinking about doing energy audits? Are our universities thinking about doing energy audits? Things are changing now as you see people are now buying tiny houses.
Right.
So there's going to start being a need to, there's like a minimalist movement coming along, but there's
Right.
also a clean energy movement. But also, while we have to take advantage of this, is because the government is investing trillions of dollars in research, technology. And so we have to be at the table as Black folks. I had a good friend who runs a coalition of clean energy folks, and
Mm-hmm.
he always says the clean energy movement is like the new next.com.
Gotcha.
Us as Black people cannot be left behind. And so clean energy culture is a part of that movement, making sure that we have access. We'll continue to have access in clean energy. You know, we'll do whatever we can to educate our folks about, making this a lifestyle. But there needs to be a transition. There's a lot of investment in the transition, and we can't be left behind. We have to be players as creators and entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of clean tech going on. So there's a whole bunches of things. So it's like, okay, how do we train and teach our folks? How do we educate our folks to take advantage of this? So how do we live more of a clean lifestyle? We hear a lot of people talking about eating clean,
Mm-hmm.
but there's also a way that we can live clean too.
Gotcha. That's true. That's true. All right. So I'd like to say thank you for joining the show, Rahsheim. It's been certainly been a pleasure speaking with you today. But before, I just have one last question. If you could just make this short and sweet, and it's something I just thought of like right before started recording. And I know you have something to do in a few minutes. So I'm just gonna make this short. So I'm gonna start asking everyone, starting from this episode here. So you're the first person I'm gonna ask. If you could, and if we could just keep this like to about a minute or so, a minute or two. Just if you could just name one or two people who have mentored you and who have had I guess a great impact on your life as far as like where you are now. It could be someone from your past, like a previous teacher. But let's do it like this. Let's do someone from your past, like back in DC, the DC area, like in high school, and then someone from like Savannah State forward. So two people, but if you could keep it sort of short.
I would say, as I was in high school, I had when I was told you I was in ROTC,
Right.
I had a retired chief petty officer, but she was tough as nails.
Right.
Chief Wilkerson. And I still talk to her to this day.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And she still shows up and supports us. But she was very adamant, very tough, and she was a straight shooter. Will hurt your feelings.
Wow.
So at that time when I was in high school, I had to have thick skin.
Right.
So it was like, your teachers in the other grades, they knew you in RTC. So there was like a certain standard that was set, one. But two, excuse my language, if you fuck up, they're gonna tell the chief.
Right.
So it's like, oh shit, I want to hear it.
You didn't want to mess up.
She go, tough, strong black women, went through the ranks back in the day to become a chief petty officer that oversee some enlisted folk. So she's tough. But so in high school, it was Chief Wilkerson, and then I would say in college, it became Dr. Elmore. I never had a teacher cuss me out.
Right.
But for good. It was
right.
It was like the most motivational cussing out I've ever had in my life.
Right.
Like you were cussing out, but you knew you could do better at the end.
Right.
It was like one of those times you close that door, close his office door, and you gonna get it. When he creep to the door, it's like, and he sit down, it's like, okay, let me just go take my head down. He about to give it to me. Know? But it was like a Big Papa type of thing.
Right.
He was a chair of the department, but he taught classes, but he taught so much. He had so much, not just life experience, but intellectual, old school knowledge from the classics experience.
Right.
And so when we came to class, it was like, when you competing against your classmate to try to answer the question, that's motivation.
Right.
I remember one time we were in the program where we had a group of students from Idaho State come to Savannah State as like this exchange program, and we went there. And they came to one of my classes where he taught. And they looked at us and, we were talking as we were walking to the cafeteria. I was like, how did you like that class? And they were like, yo, y'all were like raising your hand and like really in tune to like learning. And it was like, we learned so much about Black people just in that class, even though it was a communications class. It was
Right.
like, but it had that Black sauce in it.
Right. Right.
You know what I'm saying? And so it was one of those things where I got to really know that time was important
Mm-hmm.
because with the class started at 9 o'clock, I couldn't get there at 9:01.
Right.
And so I would meet the door. But it was like one of those things where you were inspired. I would sit by the door because I wanted to hear the lecture.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And so Doug was really inspirational to a lot of us, challenged us, made us tough because he knew this real world was tough for us. And one of the things he always told us: if you can speak well, and you can write well, and you can critically think,
Mm-hmm.
you can do anything.
That's true.
And
That's
he was
true.
damn right about that. And so those kind of words I still incorporate today, um, which keeps me going. And if there's a barrier there, I can overcome that barrier.
Okay.
Because we got the tools, brother. We got the tools.
Yes, sir. Graduates of Savannah State University. We can get anywhere from here. Well, you can get anywhere from here. So.
You damn right we can.
Right. So thank you, Rahsheim, for joining me on the podcast, man. We've been trying to make this happen for a while. We finally made it happen. I thoroughly enjoyed and inspired by your presentation as well. And once again, to everyone out there and that's watching the show, this is Rahsheim Wright, a graduate of Savannah State University, also political activist, has done a lot of activism and works with SEIU, and also, would you say clean culture, right?
Clean energy culture.
Clean energy culture. So, and also, if you get the hashtags or anything for that, for clean energy culture, we could.
Yeah.
Is there any hashtags or anything we can look for?
Follow us on IG and on Twitter, X, at Clean Energy Culture.
Okay.
We've got some great things coming. We've got some Electrify the Club events that we're doing, some music coming out, some real things, but we also, gonna teach you a little bit about why the transition to clean energy is important. So stay on the lookout for that, and definitely follow SEIU if you want to know a little bit about the labor movement, what the labor movement has going on. You can follow SEIU at SEIU. I think it's maybe _org. But once you type in at SEIU, you'll see purple and gold come up. You probably see a bunch of them come up. But we got a lot of great people around the country that are doing some great things, that are winning some major victories for workers all over the world. So definitely check out SEIU. Great folks.
Welcome to I Feel You, the podcast with your host, Dwayne Washington. I was born and raised with my family, my mom, my daddy Ronnie, my other daddy Dwayne, and my brother Quincy. I grew up in the 90s and 2000s surrounded by nothing but friends and family in the tight-knit community of Cartersville, Georgia. After graduation, I attended Savannah State University, where I loved to party and experiment with a lot of drugs. I was even homeless for a point in time in my life. But that was then, and this is now. I'm growing and evolving into a better person each and every day. And with that, I would like to say welcome to Season 2 of I Feel You, the podcast.